Good morning, everyone. My name is Arpan Banerjee. I am a doctoral fellow at the Department of East Asian Studies, University of Delhi, and academic counselor here at IGNU. So I've been teaching you the paper, the name of which is Social Policies and Administration. And the code of this paper is BPAE 144. So I welcome you all to today's learning session. So let us begin. So far in this paper, we have discussed the block 1. We have completed that. Block 1 was pertaining to an introduction to social policy and administration. And it contained 2 units. The first unit was social policy, concepts, characteristics, objectives, scope, functions, principles, and models. So that we've discussed in detail. The second unit also we've discussed in the last class, and it was pertaining to social policy and administration. So we are done with the first 2 units, that is the first block of this paper. So in today's class, we are going to start with the second block of this paper, which is pertaining to social policies and sustainable development goals in the social sector. So the sustainable development goals, which were adopted in the Paris Climate Summit of 2015, how those sustainable development goals or SDGs are related to social policies, especially in the social sector. That is something that we are going to discuss in today's class, and we are going to discuss the third unit today, which is pertaining to poverty alleviation, which is the first sustainable development goal, SDG 1, that is end poverty in all its forms everywhere. So that is what we are going to discuss in detail, the third unit pertaining to poverty alleviation. So let us begin. So given the limited resources, reliable estimation of poverty is the first step towards eradication of poverty. So when we talk about poverty alleviation, we have to first estimate that how much poverty is there, because we have limited resources. Resources are not unlimited. So because we have limited resources, hence, in order to eradicate poverty, the first step is to have reliable estimation of poverty. How much poverty is there? That we need to first find out. And that should be reliable. So, given the limited resources, reliable estimation of poverty is the first step towards eradication of poverty as a basic input for design, implementation, and monitoring of anti-poverty programs. So, poverty measurement also is very important to serve as a barometer of the extent of the success of strategies for inclusive growth and poverty reduction. So not only do we need to have a reliable estimation of poverty, which becomes very important to the input for the design, implementation, and monitoring of anti-poverty programs, and also measuring poverty. How much poverty is there in the nation amongst the population? We need to measure that, because that acts as a barometer of the extent of the success of strategies which are adopted for inclusive growth and poverty reduction. So here, if we are talking about inclusive growth, then we have to refer to the Sustainable Development Goal 8 as well, which talks about promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. So that is also a very important thing when we talk about poverty alleviation. That goes a long way in alleviating poverty. And if you see our constitution, there are multiple provisions, especially in the directive principles of state policy. Whether we talk about Article 39, which talks about equal wages for men and women, equal wages for equal work for both men and women. That also has been included in Article 39 of the Constitution of India, which is a part of the directive principles of state policy. Although it is not legally enforceable or legally justiciable, but nevertheless, it works as a guide towards the government's policy formulation. So, government has to formulate its policy according to that. Then, Article 39, it also says that the operation of the economic system in the country, it should not be such that it leads to the concentration of the wealth and means of production. That should not take place. So concentration of wealth and means of production should not be there in a few hands. Rather, the economic system should operate in such a way so as to ensure the welfare of the masses, and also equal pay for equal work for both men and women. And also this same article, Article 39, has a provision which talks about that those who are, because of old age or because of sickness, if people are, or because of poverty, people should not get into vocations which are not suited to their age or their strength. So the state also has to ensure, the Indian state, the government also has to ensure that people do not enter into such vocations or such occupations which are not suited to their age or strength. And also that children, they are protected against moral and material abandonment. So all these things have to be ensured, and these are the articles, these are the provisions in the constitution which go a long way in ensuring poverty alleviation. Then if we talk about in our constitution, there is Article 41, which says that the government should provide for work, education, in case of old age, sickness, or if a person is physically handicapped. So the government should provide for that person's work, for that person's education, right? Then we have Article 42, which says just and humane treatment of workers as well as maternity relief. Then Article 43 also goes a long way in poverty alleviation, because it talks about a living wage for workers. So if workers get a living wage which is higher than the nominal wage, then that will go a long way in alleviating poverty. And this article 43 of the Constitution, which talks about ensuring a minimum living wage, it also says that workers should enjoy full leisure, as well as they should be provided opportunities for cultural and moral enjoyment. So cultural and moral development of the workers should take place, as well as the workers should be availed enjoyment of full leisure. And to alleviate poverty, Article 43 of the Constitution also talks about setting up of cottage industries in the rural areas on either individual or cooperative basis. So that will go a long way in alleviating poverty in the rural areas, so that the workers, the people living in the rural areas, they do not have to migrate for work to the cities, to the urban areas. They can get employment in their own village. In fact, they can generate employment. They do not have to work under anyone. So this is a Gandhian directive principle. This was the vision of Gandhiji. So Article 43 it gives a responsibility on the government to set up cottage industries either on individual or cooperative basis in rural areas. And also it talks about ensuring, it also tells the state that it is the responsibility of the state to ensure a minimum living wage of the workers, and to ensure that the workers, they fully enjoy leisure, as well as the cultural and social development of the workers is also taking place. And workers should also be involved in the management of industries provided in Article 43. And those people who are suffering from poverty, and if their rights are being violated, then Article 39A it talks about that they should be given free legal aid. So all these things go a long way in alleviating poverty. Then you have Article 45, which which tells that it is the responsibility of the state to ensure education of children from the age of 6 to 14 years. Article 21A of the state makes it a fundamental right. So all these things go a long way because education plays a very important role in poverty alleviation. That you have to understand. And so these are some of the provisions that are there in the Constitution of India, which go a long way in poverty alleviation. Then you have Article 46, which says that it is the responsibility of the state to look after the welfare of the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribe communities, because they are the most vulnerable sections of the society when it comes to poverty. So these are some of the constitutional provisions which are there in the Constitution of India as far as poverty alleviation is concerned. Moving on, if we have to define poverty, poverty can be defined as a condition in which an individual or household it lacks the basic financial resources to afford a basic minimum standard of living. And according to the World Bank, poverty is pronounced as deprivation in well-being, and it comprises of many dimensions. So many people say that poverty is basically an emotional tax because it has an effect on your mental health as well. So poverty is deprivation in well-being, and it comprises of many dimensions. And poverty can be defined as a condition in which an individual or a household it lacks the financial resources to afford a basic minimum standard of living. It includes low incomes and the inability to acquire the basic goods and services which are necessary for survival with dignity. And poverty it also encompasses low levels of health and education, poor access to clean water and sanitation, inadequate physical security, lack of voice and insufficient capacity and opportunity to better one's life. So the conventional approach to measuring poverty is to specify a minimum expenditure or income required to purchase a basket of goods and services which are necessary to satisfy basic human needs. And this expenditure is called the poverty line. So when we talk about all these things, that is poor access to clean water and sanitation, Sustainable Development Goal 6, it tells that it says that the state it has to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So that also goes a long way in ensuring healthy lives and well-being for all at all ages, which is Sustainable Development Goal 3. So if these sustainable development goals are fulfilled, then poverty can be reduced to a large extent. And Article 47 of our Constitution, it also says that it is the responsibility of the state to improve conditions of health and nutrition of the citizens of India, and also to prohibit the sale and use of toxic substances or you can say narcotic substances except for medicinal purposes. So these are some of the provisions that we have discussed. Now moving on, the basket of goods and services which are necessary to satisfy basic human needs is the poverty line basket. So poverty can be measured in terms of the number of people living below this line, with the incidence of poverty expressed as the head count ratio or the poverty ratio number of poor to the total population, which is expressed in percentage. So head count ratio or poverty ratio, which basically is the number of poor people to the total population of a country expressed in percentage. And based on the methodology suggested by the expert groups or committees which are set up by the erstwhile Planning Commission, which has now been replaced by the Niti Aayog from time to time, India has undertaken periodic assessments of the incidence of poverty since 1960s. So the poverty ratio in India has been measured from an exogenously determined poverty line, which is quantified in terms of per capita consumption expenditure over a month, and the class distribution of persons obtained from the large sample survey of consumer expenditure data of the National Sample Survey Office, or NSSO. So households with consumption expenditure below the poverty line are said to be BPL, or below the poverty line, and they are deemed poor. So consumption is measured in terms of a collection of goods and services, which is known as poverty line baskets, or PLB. So if we talk about poverty estimation in India, the first official rural and poverty lines at the national level, they were introduced in 1979 by the YK Alag Committee. And official poverty counts, it began for the first time in 1979 by the YK Alag Committee. And in 1993, the DT Lakdawala Committee, it extended these poverty lines to the states of India, allowed them official poverty counts over time. So in 2005, recognizing that the rural poverty line was too low, the government appointed the Tendulkar Committee to take a fresh look at the poverty lines. And in this unit, we will discuss about the Tendulkar Expert Group, the Consumption Expenditure Surveys and Committee, and also we'll discuss about the socio-economic and caste census. All of these had given three different methods of estimating poverty in our country. So if we begin with the Tendulkar Expert Group, the Tendulkar Committee in 2009, it suggested several changes to the way poverty was measured in India. So firstly, it recommended a shift away from basing the poverty lines from calorie norms, which were used in all poverty estimations since 1979. So it says that the poverty lines should be shifted from calorie norms towards nutritional outcomes. And secondly, instead of two separate poverty line baskets for rural and urban poverty lines, the Tendulkar Committee recommended a uniform all India urban poverty line basket across rural and urban India. So thirdly, the Tendulkar Committee, it recommended using mixed reference period, or MRP, based on estimates, as opposed to the uniform reference period, or URP, which based estimates used in earlier methods for estimating poverty. So the Tendulkar Committee, it recommended incorporation of private expenditure on health and education while estimating poverty. And the Tendulkar Committee, it basically validated the poverty lines by checking the adequacy of actual private consumption expenditure per capita on food, education and health by comparing them with normative expenditures consistent with nutritional, educational and health outcomes respectively. So from 1999-2000 onwards, the National Sample Survey Organization, it switched to an MRP method, which measures consumption of 5 low frequency items, that is clothing, footwear, durables, education expenditure and institutional health expenditure over the previous year, and all other items over the previous 30 days. So the use of, now we will discuss the use of consumption expenditure surveys. So we have discussed the Tendulkar Committee. Now we will be discussing the use of consumption expenditure survey for poverty alleviation. So poverty line estimation in India, it has been based on the consumption expenditure and not on the income levels due to difficulties in assessing incomes of self-employed people. So it's very difficult to access the income of self-employed people in a large and diverse country like India. Hence, in our country, poverty line estimation is based on consumption expenditure rather than in assessing income. So daily wage laborers also the reason for this is because it is very difficult to assess the incomes of self-employed people, daily wage laborers, large fluctuations in income due to seasonal factors. Of course, seasonal unemployment, which is called casual unemployment, is also a phenomenon in India. And also additional side incomes are there, as well as data collection difficulty, which was faced in largely rural and informal economy of India. Since households, they may be able to access credit markets or household savings and thereby smoothen their consumptions to some degree, consumption expenditures may be able to provide a better basis for determining a household's actual standard of living. Hence, most of the poverty estimation committees, they propose that per capita consumption expenditure or household expenses were the right statistical choice for calculating poverty in India. And incidence of poverty was estimated by the erstwhile Planning Commission on the basis of the large sample surveys on household consumer expenditure, which were conducted by the National Sample Survey Organization on a quinquennial basis. So the National Sample Survey Organization, it regularly conducts survey on household consumption expenditure, in which households are asked about their consumption of last 30 days and is taken as the representative of general consumption. So this was considered a much better data to estimate the incidence of poverty at national and state levels by adjusting for interstate and inter-region differences in price changes over time. Hence, increasingly reliance was placed on the NSSO sample surveys on consumption expenditure by households, which was deemed to be a much better method to adjust for interstate and inter-region differences in price changes over time. Now we shall discuss about the NC Saxena Committee, or the Socio-Economic and Caste Census of 2011. So, in an effort to address various concerns regarding below the poverty line censuses and reduce inclusion and exclusion of errors, for the fourth below the poverty line identification exercise, alternative targeting methodologies were proposed and debated. So, the Ministry of Rural Development, MORD, it appointed an expert committee chaired by Dr. N.C. Saxena to propose a new methodology for identifying BPL households. So this committee, the N.C. Saxena committee, it proposed a radical departure from previous BPL censuses, and it recommended a threefold classification of households. So what was this threefold classification? It included automatically excluded households, automatically included household, and other households. So based on the Saxena Committee's recommendations in 2011, the Ministry of Rural Development, it launched the Socio-Economic and Caste Census, or SECC, which basically was a door-to-door enumeration across both rural and urban India to collect household level socio-economic data. So this census was conducted by the states and the union territories simultaneously for rural and urban areas under technical and financial support from the Government of India. So this door-to-door respondent-based survey of rural and urban households in the country, it started in June 2011 and it was completed in March 2016. So the Socioeconomic and Caste Survey, which of 2011, the Socioeconomic and Caste Census of 2011, it used the Census 2011 data as its base data. So this data was ratified by Gram Sabha and Gram Panchayat, and it captured data on households, on individual particulars, on housing deprivation, on employment, on income, on assets and amenities, and land ownership. So this socioeconomic and caste census of 2011, it ranked households in three categories. The first category was that of the automatically excluded households. So households meeting this exclusion criteria and any of the households meeting assets and income based parameters. So two are automatically excluded from welfare benefits. Then there was the automatically included category. So it included households satisfying inclusion criteria. So any of the households meeting 5 acute social destitution parameters are automatically included for welfare benefits. And there are other households also. So others are ranked on the basis of 7 indicators of deprivation, and households with the highest deprivation score will be first included in BPL list. So the government has used the socio-economic and caste census data for identification of beneficiary households while implementing its social welfare programs. What are these social welfare programs? Which the government has used this socio-economic and caste census data. They include the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the Gramin Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, the National Rural Livelihood Mission, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, also known as the Ayushman Bharat, the Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana, and the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. So for all these yojana, the government has used the socioeconomic and caste census data for identification of beneficiary households. So the socioeconomic and caste census data is also being used by state governments to implement National Food Security Act as well. And the use of socioeconomic and caste census data in the implementation of government programs, it allows for the following. So first of all, it allows for evidence-based developmental interventions. So the program-specific priority list is generated. So a program-specific priority list is generated, keeping in view the fiscal space of the welfare program for targeting specific pro-poor interventions. So the selection of beneficiaries, it gets validated through the Gram Sabhas, while identity is established through the Aadhaar card. So this leads to selection of right beneficiaries and it minimizes duplication and fraud. So this has substantially enhanced the effectiveness of the government's efforts to tackle multidimensional poverty, going beyond income or expenditure based poverty. So now if we discuss about the current level of poverty in India, as per the global statistics, poverty in India statistics of 2021 report, India is one of the world's fastest growing major economies. So according to the International Monetary Fund, at the growth rate of 11.5%, India is going to be the fastest growing economy in 2021. So the last official estimate of poverty in India done in 2011-12 was released by the erstwhile Planning Commission at 21.92%. So that was the official estimate of poverty in 2011 and 12, which was estimated using the Tendulkar Committee approach. And after that, no estimation have been officially released by, so after 2011-12, no official estimation has been released. So the Sustainable Development Goal 2019 report by the Niti Aayog also mentions the Tendulkar poverty line of 21.92%, which was adopted in 2011. And that is in India right now, it is the official poverty line. And it is interesting to know that multidimensional poverty index, or the MPI report 2009, it shows India's poverty line as 21.2% for the year 2011-12, which is based on World Bank's $1.90 poverty line for extreme poverty, which is quite close to the Tendulkar committee based poverty line. So, Global Multidimensional Poverty Index 2020 report, it indicates that India was 62nd amongst the 107 countries with a multi-dimensional poverty index score of 0.123. So with the sudden outbreak of the coronavirus in early 2019, it pushed many into poverty in India. And it is estimated that around 150 to 199 million additional people will fall into poverty at the end of 2021. Due to the pandemic, there were job cuts on a large scale. And according to the latest reports of 2020 of the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, around 7 million jobs were lost in 1 year due to COVID. So the consumption expenditure has come down and the public spending on development was sluggish. So poverty in India was expected to rise in the coming days. And as per the real-time data from World Poverty Clock, 7% of the Indian population is living right now in extreme poverty. And at present, India's poverty statistics shows that from amongst the total population of 145 crore 20 lakh 56,560 in 2024, 9 crore 76 lakh 97,747, that is 6% of people, they are living in extreme poverty. And of these people, a total of 4 crore 48 lakh 6,455 are males and 5 crore 28 lakh 91,292 are females. So females, as we can see, are more affected by poverty than males. And also the age group from 0 to 19 is the most affected by extreme poverty. And this can lead the youngsters to malnutrition and illiteracy. So Indian government spending on rural welfare schemes is helping in a big way to reduce national poverty. And by 2030, the target of government is to eradicate extreme poverty for all people everywhere. So currently measured as people living on less than $1.25 a day. Now, if we talk about combating poverty, a way forward, certain new approaches have been adopted. So, two new approaches mentioned below can pave way for poverty alleviation in our country. The first is targeting the 5 poorest families in each village. So, socioeconomic and caste census based below the poverty line list, it may be used for selection of poor families. The Gram Panchayat has to ensure that all government program benefits, they reach these 5 poorest families in each village. And a modest cash transfer for a pre-specified time may top these benefits. And also, the aim should be to ensure the target families become capable of earning and sustaining above poverty level of income within 5 to 7 years. And similar efforts in urban areas targeting 100 families in a municipality should also be taken. The second approach is regarding cash transfers, so towards cash transfers. So the Jan Dhan Yojana, the Aadhaar Mobile, so the JAM Trinity, Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, it could play a vital role in widening the reach of government to the vulnerable area sections. So the Jan Dhan Yojana, it promises to eventually revolutionize the anti-poverty programs by replacing the current cumbersome and leaky distribution of benefits under various schemes by the direct benefit transfer, DBT. So Aadhaar linked accounts, they permit aggregation of the information. The government would have an excellent database to assess the total volume of benefits according to each household. And the government, and this can pave the way for replacing countless schemes with consolidated cash transfers, except in cases in which there are other compelling reasons to continue with in-kind transfers. So Dr. Seema Gaur and Dr. N. Srinivas Rao, in their working paper, namely Poverty Measurement in India, a status update, they have discussed about the way forward in terms of two critical issues of poverty measurement and poverty elimination. So these are the two critical issues in the discourse on poverty in India. And poverty measures compare people in a society in order to assess the extent of unacceptable disadvantages that exist. However, there exist certain imperfections that stem primarily from two factors, that is data limitations and the diversity human lives being assessed more so in a vast country like India. And further, perceptions of what defines basic human needs, they vary widely according to income, level of development, socio-political belief, and other factors. So this is why views on how the poverty line should be defined, it varies widely. So the twofold strategy of enabling the economy grows rapidly with high employment intensity on sustained basis, and attacking poverty and address disparities through social welfare program, it remains very relevant. And the Ministry of Rural Development's programs focusing both on alleviating poverty through households through Manrega, through the National Rural Livelihood Mission, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Deen Dayal Gramin Kaushalya Yojana, they play a very important role in alleviating poverty. And the mission Antyodaya of 2020, they have also highlighted that the socio-economic infrastructure needs to be improved, including education and healthcare. So that can be done to eradicate poverty and to increase the effectiveness of poverty reduction efforts. So, in today's class, and also a dynamic social registry would be highly useful to attainment of India's poverty elimination programs. So, in today's class, we have discussed poverty alleviation. That is what we have discussed in today's class. And we have discussed the third unit of the second block pertaining to poverty alleviation. In the next class, we will be discussing food security, which forms a part of the Sustainable Development Goals 2. We will be discussing in the second class about improved nutrition, about promoting sustainable agriculture, right? So that is something that we are going to discuss pertaining to food security. So thank you all for joining today's class. Namaste.